Jewish Channel's Week in Review. What does the Iranian nuclear deal mean, and should you support or oppose it? Thanksgivika as a holiday of giving, Tova Feldshuh's latest role, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. This is the Iranian nuclear development deal. It's 4 pages announced Saturday night and represents an initial interim agreement between Iran and Western powers, with those Western governments hoping the deal represents an end to Iranian nuclear weapon development. Here is President Barack Obama describing the terms of the deal.
While today's announcement is just a first step, it achieves a great deal. For the first time in nearly a decade, we have halted the progress of the Iranian nuclear program, and key parts of the program will be rolled back. Iran has committed to halting certain levels of enrichment and neutralizing part of its stockpiles. Iran cannot use its next-generation centrifuges, which are used for enriching uranium. Iran cannot install or start up new centrifuges, and its production of centrifuges will be limited. Iran will halt work at its plutonium reactor, and new inspections will provide extensive access to Iran's nuclear facilities and allow the international community to verify whether Iran is keeping its commitments. These are substantial limitations which will help prevent Iran from building a nuclear weapon. Simply put, they cut off Iran's most likely paths to a bomb. Meanwhile, this first step will create time and space over the next 6 months for more negotiations to fully address our comprehensive concerns about the Iranian program. And because of this agreement, Iran cannot use negotiations as cover to advance its program.
Of course, there are many different opinions about the deal and what it represents. Those on all sides are converging to discuss it. In this specific case, you don't actually have to trust the talking heads. The full deal is a mere 4 pages long. You can follow a link on TJC's News Desk blog and read it yourself. Here are the elements of the deal. Most important from a Western perspective is that it is temporary. The interim deal expires in 6 months, and the financial relief the West is providing by unfreezing funds or lifting sanctions that represent a total value estimated at roughly $6 billion is supposed to halt entirely if a new agreement is not reached 6 months from now. The second most important part from a Western perspective is that Iran must halt the enrichment of uranium that could become weapons grade inside of a few months. The breakdown for this is a bit technical, but as the deal concerns matters of nuclear science, this is inevitable. Basically, a nuclear weapon requires uranium enriched to approximately 80% purity. Iran currently has achieved 20% purity with its uranium, but it's important to understand for the deal that it's a lot easier and quicker to go from 20% to 80% than it is to go from 0% to 20%. So what this deal does is restrict enrichment above a 5% level and demand that Iran essentially downgrade its stockpile of 20% enriched uranium so that it can't be used in a weapon. Third most important from a Western perspective is that all this change in Iran's nuclear program will be monitored by inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, with inspectors allowed to monitor these facilities daily. The gist of these conditions is ably summarized by Slate's Fred Kaplan, who writes, "The agreement makes it impossible for the Iranians to make any further progress toward making a nuclear weapon in the next 6 months, and if the talks break down after that, and the Iranians decide at that point to start building a nuclear arsenal, it will take them much longer to do so." Put another way, where the fear had been that Iran could develop a nuclear weapon within months, if this deal is successful, then in 6 months Iran will have gone backward in development, such that it would be a year or more away from a nuclear weapon. And all the while, inspectors patrolling on a daily basis would hopefully be able to detect if Iran is actually breaking this agreement and moving forward to a nuclear weapon, and then inform Western powers of that fact. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made clear he does not support this deal. Here's what he had to say.
What was concluded in Geneva last night is not a historic agreement. It's a historic mistake. It's not made the world a safer place. Like the agreement with North Korea in 2005, this agreement has made the world a much more dangerous place. I know that many share the concern of Israel, especially in the region, and there's a reason for this. For years, the international community has demanded that Iran cease all uranium enrichment. Now, for the first time, the international community has formally consented that Iran continue its enrichment of uranium. And this is in direct contravention of UN Security Council resolutions. Iran is taking only cosmetic steps, which it could reverse easily within a few weeks. And in return, sanctions that took years to put in place are going to be eased. Iran is going to receive billions of dollars worth in sanctions relief. So the pressures on Iran are being lifted, they're being eased. And with the lifting of this pressure, this first step could very well be the last step. Without continued pressure, what incentive does the Iranian regime have to take serious steps that actually dismantle its nuclear weapons capability?
So which side should you believe in this disagreement? Netanyahu with his pessimism, or the other world leaders on this deal and their optimism? They include Obama, the leaders of the other so-called P5+1 countries, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Russia, and China. That really depends on which you think is a better approach. One that halts enrichment above 5% and gains inspections now, or one that would continue to push for a complete halt to enrichment while what goes on inside Iran continues with the country essentially a black box, only penetrated, if at all, by spy agencies or by that last option, Western militaries. In some other Israel news, a goodwill mission that has saved many lives and brought many into the world has ended. The Israeli field hospital in the Philippines, set up for response to Typhoon Haiyan, closed after 11 days of operation. According to JTA, the medical team treated more than 2,600 patients, conducted 52 surgeries, and delivered 36 babies. The storm left at least 5,000 dead. Contributions to support continuing relief efforts there can be made through the American Red Cross and other agencies. Another major export for Israel is technology, and a new acquisition by the Apple Corporation makes sure it stays that way. Apple bought the Israeli motion tracking sensor firm PrimeSense for a reported $350 million. The expectation is that Apple would incorporate the sensor into its television products. Moving on, this Thanksgiving holiday became an opportunity for charity for Holocaust survivors by one of the largest and oldest congregations in the United States. Christian Needon reports.
Temple Emanu-el got into the Thanksgiving spirit last week, working with Jewish nonprofit Blue Card to provide local Holocaust survivors with handmade Hanukkah baskets to celebrate the Festival of Light. The baskets include ingredients necessary for a traditionally festive Hanukkah, canola oil, potato pancake mix, as well as candles and matches to light a menorah on each of the 8 nights of observance. Helping pack these last few baskets was Eva Cooper, a survivor who was born in Hungary and talks to school children about her wartime experiences. They began when the German army marched into her hometown of Budapest on her 10th birthday in March 1944 and included many close calls afterwards.
A lot of scary things happened. We were in front of a firing line. At first we were bombed and sought after by the Germans, and then by the end of the war, the Russians and the Americans were coming in to take over, so the bombs were between the Germans and the Russians and the Americans. And we were very lucky to survive, but in between there were several horrific experiences, and I'm very happy that we're involved in making sure that the Holocaust survivors that are still here, that we were able to help them have a good holiday dinner.
Eve Haberman's family left Germany on Kristallnacht in 1938 and celebrated her childhood Hanukkahs in America.
We celebrated every Jewish holiday in a very big manner. We had the biggest Hanukkahs, and my recollection is that my mother always forgot one present that was hidden in the top of her closet to give to one of us.
But Blue Card won't be forgetting survivors this Hanukkah season.
We are really ensuring that the survivors, many of whom are alone, homebound, have no family that's nearby, many don't have children, have a means to celebrate this holiday season, and that they can enjoy this basket in addition to a check that the Blue Card sends.
I think it's an incredibly worthwhile organization, and it's really sad that there still should be people that are in such need, and we're just lucky to be able to help.
To find out more about Blue Card's Hanukkah Basket program, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. Well-known actor Tova Feldshuh is hitting the Great White Way again. Meredith Gansman has that story.
Tony Award-winning Pippin has a new cast member, and she's a TJC favorite. Stage and screen actress Tova Feldshuh has magic to do. But first, she has to stretch.
You're as young or as flexible as your spine.
Right, or the dress you're wearing. Feldshuh is starring in the Tony Award-winning revival of Pippin. The musical follows a young prince on a journey to find meaning in his life.
Pippin explores the question, what is an extraordinary life? What is the definition? What comprises an extraordinary life?
Feldshuh plays Berta, Pippin's grandmother, a character Feldshuh has imbued with deep Jewish roots.
Berta is written by a Jewish writer. Stephen Schwartz is Jewish. I'm Jewish, and my mother Lillian will be 103. She's around, and she's alive, and she's Jewish.
You've dedicated this performance to her.
I have. So it has a lot of her in it, and that's what you're picking up. And also, but I didn't write the dialogue, her tremendous care and love of Pippin and the cadence that's used in certain sentences has a bit of that lilt.
But this bubby has a sexy side, which comes out in the transformational and show-stopping number, No Time at All.
I'm saying to my beautiful grandson, oh, it's time to start living, time to take a little from this world we're given, time to take time, 'cause spring will turn to fall.
Pippin's circus motif requires all the players to take their roles to new heights, including Feldshuh, who performs an acrobatic routine. TJC doesn't have footage of that to show you, but take it from me, you have to see it to believe it.
Growing up in the trapeze, I just kept thinking of the swing set my parents bought me.
Old hat.
And it was not old hat, it was like really going back to my childhood.
Pippin and Feldshuh are both playing their 40th anniversary Broadway season. For Feldshuh, playing in Pippin is the perfect way to commemorate this milestone in her career.
This lies at the heart of me. I mean, there's nothing I'd rather do than Pippin. It's really true. You know, if you have a lousy day, and most of my days are pretty great, because I believe, like the grandmother, you know, I have a secret I never have told. Maybe you'll understand why, to the audience, the significant other. I believe if I refuse to grow old, I can stay young.
To see more from Tova Feldshuh in Pippin, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally, the famous litigator, law professor, and novelist Alan Dershowitz is taking a look back at his high-profile career in a new book, Taking the Stand, My Life in the Law. Dershowitz explores not only what he's done, but also what he describes as the perilous state of the law today and what is to come. He also speaks about his advocacy on behalf of Israel and his disagreements with others in the pro-Israel and what he calls the anti-Israel community. Dershowitz stopped by TJC Studios for an interview, and here are the highlights. Going with that theme of the Jewish lawyer, how has that struggle affected your approach to the law?
Well, I get in trouble on both sides. For my mother, I was not Jewish enough, because I didn't accept all the halakha, and I didn't accept all the answers, and I didn't think the rabbis had all the perfect solutions. And for some of my friends at Harvard, I'm too Jewish. In America, a strong world of separation between church and state has been good for Judaism. It's been good for all religions. It's been good for America. And I'm very, very worried that the wall is crumbling. The Obama administration is partly responsible for that. They took the position
in the McCutcheon case,
right? And it was a terrible, terrible position for them to take.
Which is the public prayer at
public Christian prayer. It's not just public prayer. It's not just God, thank you.
Right.
It's thank you, Jesus, and please save us. Imagine if you're a Jew or a Muslim and you're coming to seek some relief from the legislature, and they start by praying to a God that you don't worship. You know, it really makes us feel like second-class citizens. But we need to remain first-class citizens. The only way to do that is to keep the wall of separation between church and state very high, which means yeshiva is not taking money from the federal government, which means digging more deeply into your own pockets to pay for your kids going to yeshiva. It means sacrificing a little bit of money for a lot of liberty.
Well, within the Jewish community politics, or the politics that emerge from the Jewish community. There's very much this stereotype of a Jewish community that votes left on domestic issues and votes left on almost every issue, and then on Israel is relatively right-wing.
I don't agree with that. I mean, my support for Israel is left-wing support for Israel. I am a true defender of Israel, not J Street. J Street is not a pro-Israel organization.
Why not?
Because it supported the United States voting to condemn Israel at the Security Council. Nobody in Israel wanted that. Because it doesn't support maintaining sanctions against Iran when there's universal support for that in Israel. You can't be pro-Israel and disagree with virtually every mainstream issue within Israel.
How much can you disagree with Israelis?
Much. You can disagree on settlement policy, you can disagree on its
even
willingness
to the degree
peace.
of, but you're talking about a percentage basis. You're saying basically if there's a policy that 100% of Israelis back or 90% of Israelis back, at what point do you believe there's that drop-off between pro-Israel and not?
It's not an easy question, but I think the answer is if it's not supported by the Labor Party, if it's not supported by the opposition within Israel, if it's not supported by Haaretz, if it's not supported by the mainstream left, if you're going beyond that, you can't call yourself pro-Israel. You can't call yourself pro-Israel.
Would you say the same on the right?
I would.
But is there a right-wing group in America that isn't obviously anti-Zionist, like the Neturei Karta, or are there right-wing individuals, or are there Jewish leaders that you would call out in the same way that you would call out J Street?
Not quite. They're not anti-Israel. I call them out. I attack them all the time. There are right-wing groups who think of me as an absolute traitor and attack me repeatedly on the internet. They're not. They are still pro-Israel. I think they're misguided. I think they're wrong. I think they're closer to the Christian supporters of Israel who won't give up a single inch, or the man who said that Sharon's stroke resulted from his giving up the Gaza. I mean, you can call that pro-Israel. I think it's very harmful to Israel. And I think J Street is very harmful to Israel.
You can see the full interview with Alan Dershowitz in the interviews category under TJC Original Series on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. That's all for this week from all of us here at the Jewish Channel. Have a happy Thanksgiving and be well. Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Cable Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and on Comcast in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.